Hi everyone, Highlander here. Today we're looking at another one of the custom game achievements, that is the Outmatched 4 Very Hard AI achievement. This is the highest difficulty on which you have to defeat 4 of the AIs, and we jump into that right away here. Now the map we've selected here is Megaton, and Megaton's a great map to do this achievement. It's definitely the easiest to do this achievement on. And there's a couple of good reasons for that. First of all, we have a wonderful low ground position here that's right next to the mineral line of one of our very hard AI opponents. And that's great because we can just catch him with his pants down and move him out of the game very quickly and efficiently. The second reason being is that we have our 4 very hard Protoss AI opponents all very close together, and that means if we're going to abuse their AI, it's very easy for us to do so. We can pretty easily harass them with proxy structures in their base, and there's other couple of little cool things about this map. There's not a whole bunch of expansions in their base. They have to go a bit away from their main base to get an expansion, and one of the other little tricks is that we have this gap here, we have this chasm, and we can actually cross this chasm to harass our second target fairly easily. You can get a pylon here and get a cannon over here powered by that pylon, and you can also shoot across the chasm and help cover yourself as you're establishing yourself on your second target with some cannons along here. So typical cannon rush strategy methodology: you want to get a probe, pull him off the line fairly early, not as early as you would normally perhaps, because you want to get some structures, you want to get some extra probes out. You are going to need momentum in this, so you don't want to run out of steam too early, but you get that probe off the line, try and get this pylon up so that you aren't supply blocked for too long, so you get it up soon, and then you get a forge up. Now after that, while you're waiting for that forge to complete, one great trick to do is to build a proxy pylon in their base. Now this is only a pylon after patch 1.4. Before patch 1.4, ideally you'd want to use a gas steel, but that doesn't work anymore. And keep an eye on it, because before it dies, cancel it. You'll regain your 75 minerals, and you've pulled all those probes that see that as a threat off the line and spent some time attacking it, which was, really a lot of minerals lost compared to your 25. Now, do that as much as possible without costing yourself too much in terms of time and minerals. So I only actually got the chance to do that once, but if you can do that a second time or a third time, even better. Once you get your cannons on the low ground here, you want to get a cannon on the high ground as soon as possible, and that's just beautiful because you can get one cannon here. You'll deny mining right across this whole area as long as that cannon's going to be covered by 2 other cannons. And that just makes our life very easy. Essentially, our first opponent's already dead. I'm going to pick up the pace here, and you can see where I've placed that pylon, so that it doesn't look like it, but it can just cover a 2x2 square area, and that's just exactly what we need to get one cannon up on that opposing position. Be careful, I just locked my probe in here, so that was a bit of a boo-boo. I had to end up cancelling one of my photon cannons, but you can see I'm choosing to position them along here because I can get a little bit of coverage from those cannons across the ledge, and that's just going to help me hold this second position that I'm taking. So yeah, one cannon started, get a pylon up, and we're moving in over here. Now, you're going to find that as you're going, you're going to be pushing more slowly and more slowly. And that's just because your enemies are going to be building up forces. And that means that whilst you started with one pylon and only a couple of cannons, you're going to start needing 4, 5, and getting up to like 10 cannons per pylon as you're moving along. And it can be quite challenging. This achievement definitely isn't one of the easier ones, especially since patch 1.4 when the Immortals got their range upgrade, because Immortals are actually very effective against cannons, and it's not something that you should worry about too much, because if you find they're going Immortal heavy, that's just something that the AI does on occasion at random. They won't necessarily do that every time, so if you've found you've copped that, just re-roll, try it again, and keep going until you find they aren't so Immortal heavy. So once again, we'll pick up this pace here, and you can begin to see the way the AI seems to interact when it's fighting these cannons, it does this dance back and forth, back and forth. It runs into shoot and then takes a few hits and keeps taking a few hits as it runs back. And it seems to want to kill them, but every time it gets in and feels that the threat is too great and runs away. Now, the reason we're always choosing Protoss as our main enemies is because Zealots are the bulk of their army, or the baseline of their army, certainly at the early stages, and they're not going to be able to do anything against cannons at all. They're slow, they cost a lot of money, and they just run back and forth and cop fire. Now we've taken out this second opponent, and we're moving on towards our third. Now, one thing you really need to know is that whilst I'm moving towards this third player, and he is my target at the moment, I'm being very conscious that this one player here in yellow has been building up very slowly and is going to be my biggest threat. So, rather than pushing directly towards this nexus, I'm building a line across which will eventually intersect with that nexus and allow me to take down this player, but will also help protect me from the yellow player, because I want to try and slowly get an arc that surrounds the yellow player. So treat it like a very slow zerg surround. You want to try and have a nice arc that moves around them, and pick up this pace even further. You can see how many cannons I'm getting per pylon here, and you can see that I'm keeping them divided, and I'm having this back and forth dance on two sides. So we're nearly done with that nexus now, and as soon as our cannons are in range of that nexus, even if they're still under construction, we pretty much don't want to have to worry about them anymore. Just as long as there's enough cannons there that they will survive and take out a nexus, that's great. We move on to building up a force against our yellow player, our final player. Around this stage, we're nearly at the 15-minute mark. You need to start being a little bit more aware of what's going on around the map, because you don't know what that yellow player is doing. He might have expanded somewhere, and I found this expansion. He won't have done multiple expands. He won't have triple expand or anything like that. So you can start taking out something like an expansion here. The other reason why it's useful to do this is because the AI doesn't handle this back and forth dance against multiple fronts very well. It wouldn't have done very well in World War I, Eastern Front, Western Front, so on and so forth, and it just tries to dance back and forth with a front as it handles it, and that allows you to push forward at whatever angle it is that the army isn't taking down at that particular point in time. And you can see that my little attempt to push from this side wasn't very successful, but it kept that army distracted and kept that army away. Now, I've done very well here because the enemies decided to go for carriers, and whilst carriers have a lot of range, they're also very, very mineral intensive, and that's pretty much going to prevent them spending too much money on anything else. And really, they're not going to be very effective once I've taken out all those interceptors. Now, one thing you might note is I've completely mined out my main base, and I've had to expand. I've chosen to expand to the enemy base just because I thought that was the safest place in the world at this stage in time, but I definitely could have expanded at home. And if you do run out of minerals, while you're waiting for your new nexus to go up, do what I did, which was to actually start mining the opposite position. Just long distance mining is better than no mining at all. But try to get them towards the close position as soon as you can. And from now on, it's just a simple matter of pushing and just trying to build that arc so that you can always be facing them on multiple fronts where they perform the worst. And from here on, it's just a matter of pushing through, so you don't need to see any more. That's got it all covered. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much, guys, and best of luck.